Hey, howdy, and welcome, kids. It is time once again for this week's episode of Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. We are rounding out the month of February and starting the month of March as we're covering today, Monday, February 26th through Sunday, March 3rd. But first, let's do a question. Shanoa wrote in asking a little bit about astrocartography, which is something I know a tiny little bit about. So I'm about to reveal my limitations to y'all. Here we go. Michael, astrocartography keeps coming up for me. I've just barely dipped my toes into the realm, but it poses all sorts of questions and pondering thoughts. Do you put momentum towards astrocartography? I genuinely am interested to hear your thoughts on this topic. When I discovered it, I was wildly intrigued, especially with, and this is important, guys, this strange push and pull energy that's super intense that I feel from the Boulder, Denver area that I've been a part of for the last 2 years. I'm curious about how to further implement my understanding of our connection with ourselves and Mother Earth, the outer planets, et cetera, blah, 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 blah. And she asked this question, and I'm going to mention this because I have to address it. It seems like it could be a tool that could map out cultural happenings to a certain degree, not sure. Anyways, you're awesome. Thank you eternally for your weekly podcasts. I share them with my tribe all the time. Toodles, Shanoa. So I love this question and the proximity of it coming in right after the question about out of bounds, which I addressed either in last week's podcast or the week before. So astrocartography is the technique of looking at bands of energetic influence that wrap around the earth that's specifically based on someone's birth moment, which means it's changing from moment to moment. So someone born on a Tuesday in Cleveland, Ohio, and someone born on a Wednesday, it's already shifted, right? And what declinations is this up and downness that the planets can do, right? So we think of transits as like the sort of horizontal relationship between the planets from Earth. I look up, there's Saturn. I look up, there's Jupiter. They're forming a 90-degree angle. That's the horizontal transit interaction between planets. But the planets can move up and down in the ecliptic in a manner that changes the dynamic of energy. And when you cast a chart of these energetic influences, what you get is a map of the world and directional lines of energy that all of the planets made from your first breath.
I feel like you've mentioned this before. It sounds like astrology, but like the calculus version.
Well, it's definitely an like sort of an elevated, like a technique. It's outside of the standard traditional ones, and I have talked about it, and most recently in this up and down description of what out of bounds and declination is, just recently. Now, I am not an expert in this technique, all right? So I know just enough about it that if somebody comes to me in a session and they're talking about like, oh, I'm thinking of moving, but I'm not sure where to move, we might look at their astrocartography, which will present us with this: a visual image of the bands of energy that each individual planet generated at the first breath that are permanent throughout the life. So like if your astrocartography has your Venus line of energy going across the southern United States, and maybe it goes through Louisiana, you might go to New Orleans for a vacation and be like, oh my God, I love it here so much.
Mm.
That's from your astrocartography Venus line going over a place on the planet where if you followed that line around the globe, you'd feel yummy everywhere that that line traversed. By the same token, your Saturn line makes the same sort of band around the Earth, and those might be cities or towns or countries that you don't feel so comfortable in a kind of vibey sort of way. Now, I don't know about how you would use astrocartography for world events because my understanding of this technique is it's related to individual natal chart expression, not the collective. Although it would be interesting to see what the chart of the USA natal, chart for the country might sort of describe, like lines of energy that might get more amplified in current difficult experiences that might happen on the planet. But I am so limited in this technique that everything that I've just said to you, all of y'all, and to you, Shanoa, since you've asked the question, is the top of my authoritative knowledge of this technique. In fact, I'll say this to wrap out the answer of this question. If anybody listening knows an astrologer who is an expert in astrocartography, email me because I've been dying to get one in my referral pocket. I had one like 10 years ago, and but I didn't know her, and I've lost contact with her. And the person who connected me with her, I asked him a few years ago, "Hey, do you remember that woman who was the astrocartography expert?" And he was like, "No, I don't remember." So, listeners, if you know an expert in astrocartography, send me an email at michael@michaellennox.com. Thank you very much. It's a pretty slim week this week in terms of the astrology of the 7 days that we're covering. Partly because we just had a full moon, and so we've got 2 weeks before the next lunation and the change of the lunar cycle. It's just the planets are kind of quiet, but there's something happening on Wednesday that's pretty juicy. It starts with what we call the superior conjunction between the Sun and Mercury. The Sun and Mercury are coming together on Wednesday by conjunction, which means we are going to be receiving guidance, messages, instructions, if you will, about things we need to know about how we're moving through life. That's the nature of this conjunction that happens on a regular basis. When Mercury's retrograde, we call it the inferior conjunction because Mercury's in between the Earth and the Sun. Like literally, if we looked up in a telescope, we would see Mercury crossing the face of the Sun. And when Mercury's retrograde and we don't know what's going on because the planet of perception is visiting the unconscious, this gathering is more important than it is when Mercury's in the free and clear posture as he is now. But I always share this when I'm talking about it because it'll make sense to people that if the Sun is our conscious awareness and Mercury is how we think and perceive, and those two things, while they are related to each other, are not the same thing, that every time the Sun and Mercury come together, we are expanding our conscious awareness vis-a-vis aligning it with a more efficient sort of structure of perception. So when Mercury's retrograde, it's really important to pay attention to because we're going to get messages that are otherwise hidden from our view. And that's not quite the same when Mercury's direct, right? It's not so much about messages that are hidden, but understand that Mercury is ultimately a trickster archetype, and very often the messages that are important come through synchronicities, happy accidents, things we didn't notice but grab our attention and land as important messages. And this is true whether Mercury is retrograde or direct. So from just that perspective, right smack dab in the middle of this week, we have this opportunity to get kind of integrated between our awareness and how we perceive what's going on. But there's more in this setup that's going to make it even juicier. So the next layer to add to what this week is going to bring has to do with the fact that Saturn is now in Pisces. Saturn guides our responsibilities, our karmic lessons. He tells us where the squeezes are going to be that we're designed to learn from. And for the 2.5 years he's in Pisces, the challenge of Saturn in Pisces is so much of the lessons we're going to be moving through are going to be emanating up out of unconscious spaces. That's the invention of the Pisces mansion. Is everything that's not knowable in the land of form on earth is held by Pisces, who invented everything else, right? The consciousness of the first, 11 signs is then held in the unconscious in the sign of Pisces. So Saturn moving through Pisces means that the way we bump into our demands from Saturn might come through unconscious experiences that gonna make it a little harder to precisely know what it is we're, like, having to learn. Mercury and the Sun come together at 9 degrees of Pisces, and guess where Saturn is this week? 9 degrees of Pisces. It's an exact stellium at the exact same degree, 9 degrees of Pisces, which, makes this little astrologer very excited because the precision counts. So now we have a moment that's not just about getting guidance about pushing our perceptions to be more in alignment with what we actually are consciously aware of, Sun, Mercury by conjunction. Now it's important. Now it's a lesson. Now it's something of great reckoning that the teacher is in the house saying, this week's important, and it's really important to get your thinking in alignment with your sense of what you're conscious of, and there might be important messages that come this week as a result. Saturn takes what's possible with the Sun and Mercury and just amplifies it to like it's grad school and we're being tested. I'll add a little piece here that if you know what house in your natal chart is ruled by Pisces, that's where the action's going to be. The degree point is 9. So if you have any planets or points at like 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 degrees of any sign, then this stellium is interacting with your natal chart. If you know what I'm talking about, then you know enough about astrology to go looking on your own. Double check if you do have any placements in your chart that are going to be directly receiving a hit from Saturn, the Sun, and Mercury. But there's more. Because Jupiter is hanging out at 11 degrees of Taurus. Jupiter and Saturn have a direct relationship with each other. They are both the social planets. Their movements and their transits reflect life outside your front door. Like the outer planets are about our higher selves, the personal planets are about us in our bodies. And Saturn and Jupiter are about everything that we create in the world, in our neighborhoods, out there and about socially in interaction with others. So, when Saturn and Jupiter are forming a productive sextile, the benefit to us is that we experience a greater balance between what we're responsible for and the difficult lessons we're being asked to move through, Saturn, and the expansion and the incredible largesse we get to experience when we do the work that we're charged with doing, Jupiter. 60 degrees means they're working productively together. And so this gathering of Sun, Mercury, and Saturn that's so important has, as part of the raw material of the week, is this efficiency of I can face what my responsibilities are more, I don't know if joyfully is the right word, but that's the word I'm going to use, more joyfully, because Jupiter is also in the mix this week saying, if nothing else, the hard work is worth it. So the last little piece to add to this is that while this gathering of Sun, Mercury, and Saturn sextiling Jupiter is happening this week, we've got the moon in Libra, balance and harmony, We're, while the moon's in Libra, we're in a better position to understand both what's happening inside of us and the outer reflections that are being generated. And so the Libra moon will look at Saturn in the Great Eliminator and Jupiter in the Great Eliminator as we move through this Wednesday peak of this mechanism that I've been describing. That creates a finger of God or a finger of fate. What it means is that this week is important, and it's deeply important to all of us at the individual level from this perspective. As we move through the week, we're going to be in a position to make new decisions because of what we've learned over the last X period of time of lessons. Saturn likes to reward for a job well done. And so this finger of God is like a navigating transit. It says, if and as I make decisions to try new things this week, the winds of fate will blow in my sails and move my ship closer to my desired goal.
That sounds yummy.
I don't know that the week is gonna feel yummy, Zoe, but
Oh.
there's value in the way this is being set up. And what I'm gonna recommend about this isn't that you do something as we move through Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, but that you pay attention to what your impulses are of choices that rise up all week long. Because the likelihood is that Saturn's presence is going to allow you to make higher choices that come from spaces that are richer in you because you've learned a thing or two, that you will automatically be making better choices that the world and the universe will meet with the fingers and the hands of fate and the winds that help us move forward, right? So pay
Mm.
attention to the choices you're making this week in a kind of witnessy kind of way and just say, that's interesting. I wonder if this choice is reflecting greater wisdom, because chances are it will.
Amen.
It's going to be an interesting weekend vis-a-vis Venus, and you know that I'm doing my Venus check-ins every week still. But before I talk about Venus, let me just at least mention leap year. Leap year is not an astrological transit, but the fact that we have a leap year is because of the flaws in the Julian calendar that we in Western astrology are trying to cram the movement of the solar system into. So the orbits of the moon around the earth around the sun, and the rotation of the earth in a 24-hour spin lines up quite elegantly, but not symmetrically. We're off by a little, which is why we have to make up for lost time with leap year, so that every 4 years of time, we've measured only 3 years and 364 days. We need to add an extra day. That's leap year. So I'm not really even sure why I'm mentioning this, except perhaps to say we're in leap year, so March will have an extra day in it, and that it's not really astrologically significant that we have a leap year. It's significant culturally and calendar-wise and socially and in terms of the collective, but it's
Is
it's
it?
it's more.
What do people do for leap year? Like, what do you mean culturally and socially? Sorry, it might
Meaning,
just
we
be
are
me.
all
I've
aware
never
of
done
leap year
anything. Oh,
culturally and
okay.
socially. We're all
Got
going to
it.
have conversations about, oh my God, it's leap
Yeah.
year. Oh my God. Like, that's what I mean. It's significant to us. People will be talking about it, but it's not like it has an astrological significance. Even if someone was born on leap year, it's not going to alter doing their yearly transits if they were coming for a session. So I mention it. So it's going to be a very interesting weekend with regard to Venus's movement, both, I'm really talking about Friday through Sunday. So remember, in the journey of Venus, I've been following Venus acutely on this podcast because I've been so excited about everything that she's been engaged in the last year and a half that has been helpful and healing. That last week, and we talked about this on the podcast, Venus and Mars came together by conjunction. So that was an important moment in the arc. If you go all the way back to like March of 2022, that was the last time Venus and Mars came together by conjunction with the Pisces new moon on March. I think it was maybe March 2nd. You can look it up. It's the 2022 Pisces new moon. And you had Venus and Mars together with Pluto exactly at 27 degrees of Capricorn. It's like, even right there, if we go back 2 years, I'm interested in Venus's story because the planet of love met up with her beloved Mars in a masculine and feminine principle integration moment at that new moon that included Pluto. So it was about a death and rebirth in how we are embodying Mars, our loving heart, Venus. Then last summer, which is sort of why I really am obsessed with Venus, is that they almost got together for their next conjunction because it generally happens once a year. They got very close to meeting up in the summer of 23, but Venus started to slow down because she was going to do her retrograde there and Mars moved forward, right? So I've been talking about that the Venus retrograde in Leo opened us up to more deserving in the heart, and the eclipse season that we just came out of. Both lunations were ruled by Venus. This is why I'm talking about Venus. So the fact that they finally got together again last week, Mars and Venus by conjunction, is that integrating moment that harkens back to spring of 22 and summer of 23. Only now we're done with a lot of deep processes. Last week allowed us to feel a sense of integration inside ourselves of our masculine and feminine, our doing and our being, our ability to make choices, Mars, through a more open heart, Venus. And then we move through a kind of exciting, open, healing possibility on Friday of this week as Venus will sextile Chiron. So opening us up to understand the wounds of our heart, but not from a place of, ow, I got to heal them, more from a, oh, look how open my heart is. Around the same time on Friday, the sun is going to sextile Jupiter. That's just a sidebar transit on Friday that makes the day one where we're going to feel expansive, confident, optimistic, and open to all possibility. So we enter the weekend in this big, yummy, healing, lovely possibility. And then on Sunday into Monday, Venus is going to square Uranus. And there's even a little, semi-square between Jupiter and Neptune on Sunday, which is confusion. So you've got sudden, unexpected breakdowns in love, intimacy, and even finances, along with some big confusion on Sunday. So this sets up like an interesting story this is going out there to people who are in a narrative that's very specifically relational and relationship oriented that might be a little painful. If that's you, you can expect an exciting, possibility-driven expansion as we meet the weekend and maybe a little bit of a course correction as we move from Sunday into Monday. Pay attention to matters of the heart as you move through the weekend ahead and have at it.
Did you know that Michael has a daily astro alert? If you enjoy hearing the weekly astrology, you might like knowing more about each day. When you subscribe for the daily astro alerts, you'll get an in-depth explanation of the day's astrology sent right to your email. Subscriptions are only $10 a month, or you can purchase the yearly subscription at the reduced price of $100. To subscribe, head over to michaellennox.com. All right, it's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show.
This week we have an email and dream from Dorian. And Dorian is hoping to clear out their head with this, getting an interpretation on this dream.
Okay, give it a shot.
Okay, they say, first things first, this is one of those dreams that happens when you go back to sleep after dropping off kids and mom stuff. In my dream, I am sitting crisscross on my bed in a room that is not my waking room, but this tiny, dark, paneled wall room is consistent in my dreams. My Uncle Tigger, who's now passed 2 years ago, walks in the room to the other side of the bed and sits on the side, while my grandmother, who is alive, comes in and stands at the doorway. Now I was so warm and happy seeing Tigger, and I knew in this dream that I was looking at him in the afterlife. He had long, thin 90s rock hair, black jeans, and a purple 3/4 sleeve sweater on. He looked great. I turned to my grandma and said, "Y'all look like you're going out." It was mentioned by someone in the dream, but I don't know who, that they're going out for his birthday. She responded some funny joke about food and drinks that I'm so mad I can't remember. It was definitely something he would say. He was one of those that will call you over and ask you how far you've gotten if you didn't turn around. She stayed at the doorway with her arms crossed, clutching her purse. I then asked Tigger, was she going to Moultrie, a place that he used to live? And he stood up off the bed and walked up to her. I jumped off the bed to give either one a hug, but I woke up before I could. So she woke up right before she could give them a hug. I got a heavy feeling of what this could mean. I've had many types of dreams Spirit has shown me that I could interpret as a human. I'd just like to know of any other interpretation that this could have. Thank you. I mean to mention, Michael, the big question of this all was the subject of her email, which is, does this dream mean my grandma is passing?
Yeah. I mean, of course, that's what I'm sitting here.
Well, you
thinking.
probably caught on, but
for
those of us
that
out
was
there,
not lost on me.
She wants
That
to
was
know,
not-
is grandma
She
passing?
wants to know what I think about whether or not this could mean that.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm sitting here thinking, does this dream mean that her grandmother is also going to pass away? And of course, that we're thinking that, Dorian's thinking that, because it does seem like it's a visitation dream from Uncle Tigger, because visitation dreams have a tendency to take place in the room that the person is sleeping in. And even though this isn't Dorian's actual room that she's sleeping in, it's this sort of special dream room, sleep room, right? That's what she indicated, that it's not her real room, but it's like a dark paneled room that shows up in all of her or many of her dreams. Did I get that
It's
right?
consistent. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. So right there, we know that there's a consistent room that is a room that she is sleeping in dreamland. Then there is something about that space that's, I think, like liminal space. Something special is going to happen if the dream is taking place in that room. And it does feel concomitant to a visitation dream. So Tigger is passed. Grandma is in the doorway. That even right there suggests in this room is the multidimensional landscape in which someone who's passed can enter and visit me. But the doorway says grandma's not in that room. She's still in a body, so she can't actually join in. So all of this sort of says, is this a dream about grandma's passing? Now, here's the thing that I can sort of cut to about like the freak out fantasy that might be coming. Number one, we're not that powerful. The dream is not like, it just doesn't work that way. I have in my thousands of dreams that I've heard, and even many that are about deaths and passings and crossings over, outside of someone receiving information about a passing in a dream while it's happening, I've just not heard that many precognitive dreamers who were like, I had a dream that grandma was passing and then she passed.
Yeah.
Not that it can't happen, but I've not heard it enough to be like, oh, Dorian, that's what this is. Because if I've heard that happen, it's from someone who's very specifically gifted in a precognitive dreaming style in that way. And so unless Dorian wrote in her email, I've predicted many, many, many deaths
Yeah.
before. And that's so it's like, so right there, this dream could so be reflecting the worries and fears of grandma's ultimate passing.
Like, it's definitely on her mind, but doesn't mean it's happening.
Like, yeah, like it's on her mind, and that could explain the presence of her in this, liminal space. And even this, like, they are going out for his birthday and that she responds with a funny joke. That to me suggests that she's not dead yet, because the going out for the birthday might be the moment when they are united in that beyond the veil place. Right? Because I do a lot of ipso facto in dream interpretation. So one of the ipso factos in this dream is they are not at the birthday celebration.
Yeah.
They might go to a birthday celebration. Grandma even responds with like, oh, there's lots of joy and drinks and fabulousness. I think I'm getting that right, that she made that joke. But you see what I'm saying, Zoe? That it's like the birthday party celebration for Tigger might be the symbol of, at some point, Grandma and Tigger will be in the same place, but they aren't yet.
Mm-hmm.
So then the dream might really be about the unconscious fears and worries that Grandma's, towards the end of her life. Even this, is she going to Moultrie, which I don't know where that is, but it's someplace they've been together, right? So even that suggests that not yet, but at some point soon, there's going to be a real reunion between Uncle Tigger and Grandma.
Yeah.
But I don't think the dream has to be a direct prediction that it's coming and that it's coming now, unless, Dorian, you're listening to this and you're like, oh, yeah, I have had lots of dreaming experiences that were precognitive in that way. And if the answer is no, you haven't had really specific, detailed precognitive dreaming, I think this dream is probably more about anxiety than a clairvoyant moment hitting your dream state.
All right. There you go, Dorian.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.